Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me? Seems there are some issues with network connectivity. Welcome, everyone, on our weekly community meeting, development Cozystack. We have Telegram group where you can join and ask your questions. We also have Slack channel and official Kubernetes Slack. Do we have anyone new on this call? Probably we don't. Please put your name into this list. We'll post link here. And today we are going to introduce the new decisions and new solutions we're going to introduce in the Cozystack in the next version. So the first news that we get, we just published the article on official Kubernetes blog about the implementation of our API server, which works as API on API aggregation layer. The demo I showed you before, there is actually already a lot of information how it gets implemented and how exactly it is working and the reasons why we decided to go exactly this way. So if you're interested, please share this article, read it. I think it has a lot of interesting information about the implementation of this feature. The next announce that we decided to use Keycloak as our default OIDC-server in Cozystack, and we already started working on this. So currently, we already prepared an pull request where new version of Cozystack get installed the Cozystack, the Keycloak, and now we are working on approach how we're going to use it. So for now, we have just the integration with Kubernetes, with the management Kubernetes cluster. We prepared 4 different groups, default roles, I can say, for view applications, use applications, to admin applications, and also we have superadmin role, which will be allowed to create another tenants and tenant-specific applications. We think that for the beginning, these default 4 default roles should be enough for every tenant. So when you create new tenant in dashboard, it will also spawn additional roles and role bindings, which you can assign in Keycloak to your users. We still have a lot of things to discuss, especially the model, how we're going to configure the Keycloak itself, how we're going to map users from other OIDC servers, and should we use one realm or multiple realms, and how we're going to actually configure the Keycloak itself. Should we provide the interface, Keycloak interface to the end user, or should we write some additional service or API for configuring it from the Kubernetes resources? That's actually the discussion we have for today. We have no other topics to discuss. Let's start. Do you have any ideas? Okay, let's start from this short question. What do you think? Should we use multiple realms in Keycloak or use just the single one? Especially, my idea was to using single realm and use the single realm for all Cozystack applications. This would allow us to add multiple OIDC providers and allow them authenticate users for the specific from the specific OIDC servers, and you can have a single scope of the users which you can map from different servers into the core one. And following that means that you can add users from these different OIDC servers to the specific groups related to the specific tenants.
I thought a little bit, and I think it's a rational idea because if you would stick to like multiple realms, it would mean that your tenant system won't be effective anymore because you will need somehow to attach one or more tenants to one on more realms. So single realm or a single installation of Cozystack sounds a better approach.
I think so. We can also consider using separate realms for different user applications. I know, for example, we can use single realm for Cozystack API and dashboard, and the different realms for configuring every specific Grafana and user-specific applications. But I think we should start from the single realm because in this way, the configuration seems simpler to me. And as about different OIDC servers, I think we should use prefixes like vendor, I know OIDC vendor, colon, username. This would allow us to specify users. Actually, the users from the different OIDC servers, they will be considered from they will be considered as different users, but they can be still attached to the correct groups, and users from these realms will get correct settings and correct privileges to manage the Cozystack itself.
Yes, I think that you should highlight that we are doing it intentionally because not every OIDC server, or better to say, user provider would be a trusted one, right? So let's say we can have two GitLabs connected to one Cozystack installation, and these GitLabs are administered by a different number of people, and they could have the same set of users for some reason. And these users won't be equal to each other. So if we would say that this user would be mapped always in the same user inside of Cozystack, it would create a security risk.
Totally agree. And there is also a good question, should we map groups and roles from the OIDC provider provided by the user? I thought that we can have local list of the groups on our own Keycloak and just authenticate users from the other OIDC providers.
I think that this question could be postponed somewhere in the future. So the basic functions look like that we need to get the user list, map it into Keycloak, and allow the administrator of tenant map these users onto some predefined roles inside of Cozystack. And yes, if we want to extend the platform, then the question will arise how we would like to map the groups from external OIDC provider. Yeah, but I think we can postpone it right now.
Yeah, but we definitely need to have local groups. And can we agree that local groups functionality will be enough for the beginning? So we can have 4 groups, 4 different group names for every tenant. And if user belongs to this group, then they can be considered that they have specific permissions to this group.
Not very clear. So you mean that we have a local groups and we must map all local users to some group, right?
I mean, give me a second. I'll try to list it here. For example, we have tenant root. And for every tenant, we can have 4 different role bindings created at the beginning. So tenant root admin, tenant-root-use, tenant-root superadmin, and what else we have? Read-only.
View.
View. Thank you. So we have just these 4 groups created for every tenant. I think it should be enough for the beginning. And to let user get some privileges, you just need to add this user to the specific group in Keycloak. The other question, should we recreate this group somehow? Because as far I can see, if OIDC providers have no any groups created before, then it should just work as is. It might be just sugar for administrative users who would configure these groups. But we can, at the beginning, since we have no any automation for Keycloak configuration, we can instruct them to create these groups manually. What do you think about this?
Sorry, what?
I mean,
So,
if we create tenants, those role bindings will be created automatically, but it will not create those groups on the Keycloak itself. I just thinking if it's a problem or not at the current phase of the implementation.
It's not a problem because we can do everything manually, and we can give a permissions in 2 places. So we can set up permission on role binding level inside of tenant. Yeah, so it would be a part of tenant Helm chart. So you can add a specific map into tenant and map the embedded roles onto users or vice versa. Yeah. Even if these users are not existing, it's okay. Or you can leverage the groups inside of Keycloak and don't use an extensive role mappings inside of tenant on the Kubernetes level.
Yeah, I think we already have a pull request prepared with these role bindings. The only question is, how should we instruct the user to give the permissions? And this is also a good question. Should we give Keycloak interface to end users? Not to the end users, but administrators of the platform.
I think that Keycloak should be allowed only for the administrator. But I want to mention that administrators of tenants would want to add additional users from a different OIDC providers and even different organizations to be allowed to access this tenant. So it's natural choice to add a specific mapping inside of Helm release representing the tenant, which would represent this role model. And even more that you can then wrap it into some nice UI, because it would be just a map.
Yeah, this is good point. I just wrote it down. Thank you for this. That's a good question. Maybe should we introduce additional role for, or just additional role for superadmins to let them log into Keycloak interface and configure providers as they want to? But
Andrei, I don't think that they should even go to Keycloak. So we have a strong argument. First of all, we want to configure everything like a code. Yeah, the only option to configure everything is like a code is to add additional fields into Helm release of tenant, and they would be passed somehow, I don't know, like by flags or by some kind of operator, and they will set up Keycloak in a proper manner. Yeah. If you would give access to Keycloak itself, it imposes the next things. First of all, it could be a source of some vulnerabilities, because if you could log into Keycloak, you need to strictly prohibit user from some undesired things, because if you're giving them very wide permissions, they can just break the whole system, not only like single tenant. Yeah, I don't like this idea. So we need to restrict users from any changes and allow them to some subset of things that they can add. So what they can do, they can add some additional OIDC provider, and we need agree what fields they could change. Yeah, and like consider some things that like two different tenants could add one OIDC provider under the same name, or two different OIDC providers under the same name. What will happen? And we need to like consider all possible corner cases, because it would be a single Keycloak installation. It's a shared resource, and if it would be down, a whole platform won't be working okay.
Makes sense. In this way, I would like to separate the development of this implementation to different phases. And we can define and we can agree what phases do we have right now and what we want to implement right now and what we want to implement later. Let's do that. So phase one, I would define that we have Keycloak. We have single administrator of this Keycloak.
Which is in effect administrator of the whole Cozystack installation.
Yeah. We can specify that only admin of all Cozystack cluster should have access to Keycloak. Do we need to automate somehow the configuration of the Keycloak itself, or we can just say to this administrator, hey, just create a realm, just create groups like that, and just use it?
I think that on phase one we can do everything manually, but we need to automate it as soon as possible. Let's say it would be phase 1.5.
Okay, so we need documentation of how to create realm, how to add users, and how to add groups, and how to add users to the groups.
And how to create client, Keycloak client.
Why do we need to create clients? We need client for the Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
Of Kubernetes. But how can Kubernetes be configured to use this client? We also need some automation for generating kube-configs.
Maybe documentation of configure API server. Add additional arguments. And kube-config.
So we're saying that they would be able to give user the ability to log into KubeVirt clusters with like a kube login using OIDC.
Yeah, I think we need some interface for this, like kube login, or there was some nice web UI for this. I actually don't remember.
Open Unison, or I'm not sure if that integrates with Keycloak or if it competes.
Yeah, something like that. I think I used Gangway or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's.
I don't like Gangway and other solutions, so probably time to teleport. Ha ha ha. What do I mean? Because I don't like idea that there is an additional service besides Keycloak that is in charge of building kube-config files.
If we use Keycloak, we need to install kube-login and patch kube-config adding user as OIDC user, and all will be work.
Agree, but a lot of moving components. So what I want to achieve, so first of all, have as low number of components that we can. Yeah, so gangway is an additional thing, and kube logging is another thing. And second thing, so okay, we have a kubectl. Yeah, the user want to have a native interface to Kubernetes. Again, with as low number of additional tooling that he can install, that he should install on his laptop.
Ideally, there's a service that you can pull a kube-config down from that will give you access to all the clusters that you should have access to, and not any of the ones that you don't.
Can we somehow generate those kube-configs on Cozystack? I know, maybe add additional field in tenant to download already Kubernetes config. I think it is pretty similar to have just kube-login installed and have single kube-config for every user. I can explain what I mean. So when we have a dashboard, we can get into tenant and we can get secret here, which user will just download and use as its own kube-config. Would it work?
Look, I worry that we could not provide a single kube-config for the whole set of users. So it would be nice, yeah, but what is not good here that if user need to connect to like 10 clusters in Cozystack, he would need to have 10 different configs and somehow to manage them on his side. So in Tanzu, let's say, it was like resolved by an specific CLI client, TKGI, yeah, which generates a config on the client side. So it was almost the seamless experience.
Do you know the solution they use?
They integrated CLI into their platform, so they proxied somehow kube request to kube API server. I don't know how.
What I've been doing on my multi-tenant configurations, I don't have a service that I can pull down a list of clusters that I have access to. So I have a list of clusters that I have access to hard-coded. I'm reaching out to each cluster and grabbing the CA. Obviously, we can get that another way that is more secure. And then there's just a OIDC client secret. Those are all the components that you need. So if there's one OIDC client secret that you spread across all of the clusters that you have access to. But I've been using a little Go tool that I built just to cobble these things together. If we have an actual service, we can query to say what clusters do I have access to first, then we could construct it a little bit more intelligently. So you only get the clusters that you have access to in your kube-config file.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that.
Guys, what again I want to mention that we should provide a good user experience. To do it, we must describe several scenarios. So let's say we have a cluster admin, yeah, and he wants to access cluster, and it won't be like a big deal to provide him a Kubernetes config from dashboard, right? But if we are talking about particular user, which like can have an access to a bunch of clusters inside of tenant, probably it would be more convenient to have a specific panel for this user where he can like download a single kube-config file allowing to access all the cluster inside the Cozystack installation. So it's not so like straightforward thing right now for me. So the only solution that like have such a capability is a teleport, but it would need to
I can't hear you, or is it my problem?
No.
Or no, nobody? Okay. Georg, we can't hear you. We still can't
But
hear
from
you.
another perspective, it could be a good thing because as you have like a bunch of, sorry, I'm on mobile phone, so probably there is some like disconnect. So what would bring teleport instead of like current approach? We would have a single entry point, single entry DNS name, yeah. But if we would generate a kube-config for every cluster, I think it would mean that we will have a separate Kubernetes endpoint, right?
Yep. Correct.
I think that we need to collect more arguments and decide the correct approach on the next meetup.
Yeah, but we need to agree on some solution right now, and I think that kube login should be the easiest one. And we can just describe the documentation. How can you use kube login for get access to the cluster using OIDC? I really like idea of using teleport, but for now we're just solving the issue with the OIDC for management cluster. So we just need to find the solution. How can we separate users, and how can we let them be authenticated from different OIDC servers? In this way, Keycloak works.
Stop, please. So why we need to solve the issue with OIDC on management cluster? I thought that we are using OIDC to properly map a role model to a tenants and tenant clusters, not?
No, we are talking only about management cluster for now. The tenant clusters we will solve later. We can even add additional phase. I think it might be phase 3. And
yes, but look, but it contradicts the first claim that you made, that no user should access to a management cluster.
It's different now since we develop our own API. We can allow them to use only specific API interfaces we provide. So it should be secure enough to not let them modify Helm releases and operate just with the entities we provide. In this way, we just need to solve how to authenticate the users who are accessing the management cluster.
Yes, but in the same time, it means that if you are developing your own API server, and there are some different approaches, so it could be like a proxy to API server or additional API server. And if it would be like a proxy to an API server, like it was done in Rancher, yeah, you can make a trick. So you can augment the kubectl request to API server with some header. It could be like just thing like a login and password of user, and check it on API server side without any additional tooling.
Yeah, we thought about this approach. For now, we just added our new kinds for which we specify the roles and role bindings. And also we can let the users to see specific resources, like to let them SSH or run VNC console for their virtual machines. And we use our API just to cover Helm releases. To not let them use their own custom Helm charts and to make an influence on the system. So for now, we have a single Kubernetes API of the management cluster, and we need to let users request the new services through the Terraform, through the kube-config, kube control, and Helm charts. I know any tooling which will let them to put set of YAML files into the API of management cluster to get their services running. We already solved this by implementing our own API server. For now, we solving the issue. How can we to make authorization working for those users? Yeah.
I think you need to ask Maxim Naboki because he knows how.
He is main adopter of DEX and even developer. I think even maintainer of DEX. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because to be honest, OIDC is not very suited for automation. So on the previous video with Dex, he shown how it could be used. Because in pipelines, you don't have an option to like click on SSO link here and get JAT token. So he proposed a solution and it looked almost fine to me, as it anyway needs some interaction from user side, but it could be like also automated.
If I remember correct, the solution they develop DexHouse and integrate DexHouse with Dex, and they have some web interface for downloading where user can authenticate itself and download their own kube-config file. Probably they use Gangway or something like that. I'm just thinking, should we use the similar approach or can we just use kube-login? I think kube-login for the beginning should be pretty enough.
Yes, but we are talking about different scenarios. So it's not interactive pipeline. So when you can have a kube config file, but if you are using kube-config file plus kube-login on your local machine, you anyway will be redirected to IDP provider.
Yeah, this is our Keycloak actually.
Yes, but you are talking about different thing when you need to run a Terraform and you don't have a like web browser at all.
You mean how can you get the kube-config without having access to the web browser?
We can have a kube-config because we downloaded it already. But when you will try to use it, in your automated pipeline, like in GitLab, there is no web browser at all. You could not click on like enter your login and password in browser.
Yeah, this makes sense. This is a good question. I will write it down.
Yes, and he knows how to fix it. So he shown a demo how you can fix it. So it's not like how to get kube-config, but how to use a kube-config with kube-login if you don't have a browser for robots, right?
I think there's a solution for this in Pinniped. I've been using Dex, and I remember that being the thing that differentiated Dex from Pinniped was that Pinniped had a solution for federated robot identities.
How is it called?
I'll put it in the chat. Pinniped.
I don't know what is Pinniped, but it's the same flow like used for, I don't know, like for phones, for TV boxes with some kind of pin code, right?
It's very similar to Dex. I think it probably overlaps again with Keycloak, but maybe there's something that we can learn from the way they solve it because I know that was what they target.
Yes, there is another option. Another option is to like introduce some kind of API tokens on top of Cozystack level. It could be just, I don't know, like a long-term JAT token obtained from a service token account. Oh my God, something like very terrible and very difficult to manage. Yep. So I think we should have some easy to understand, easy to debug flow.
We can get token for login to Kubernetes cluster via curl and set this token in the kube-config file.
Yes, but you need already an access to Kubernetes before, and you don't want to expose an API.
No. I need send REST API request to my Keycloak with my credentials, and I'll get token for accessing to Kubernetes cluster.
Maybe it would work.
The good question, how to wrap it actually, and how to show it in user interface. We can also consider implementing some kind of separate application in Cozy catalog, which would result you to download kube-config for the specific tenants. Let's solve that later. I think we can move it to the phase 2. And on this phase, we also should think how to automate Keycloak configuration. I would also ask the community if you have any success stories or how you do this in your organization, which tooling do you use? If you have any experience, please share it.
You can mention 3 things: Keycloak operator, and also probably you wrote Keycloak improperly, please fix. Keycloak operator, Terraform provider, and Ansible role.
Does Keycloak operator perform actually configuration of the Keycloak?
Yes, it could create, as I remember, realms, but I'm not sure about other objects. And anyway, it's official one, so I think it would have more objects in future and cover more workflows inside of Keycloak management.
Okay, you said Keycloak operator, Terraform, and what else?
Ansible role, dedicated Ansible role.
Thank you.
So, to be honest, Ansible role is not good because it's Ansible and we need somehow to wrap it. Terraform provider is better because we have things, tofu controller, and we know how to use Terraform, so it could be easily integrated with Kubernetes, but Terraform is a huge overhead, so I don't like it. Keycloak operator probably is the most native way to manage the Keycloak installation, but unfortunately it lacks a lot of essential functions for us.
I was also thinking, yeah, please go ahead.
What is Keycloak configuration? For example, if I wanted to create a realm and a client for Kubernetes, okay, I can do it with Terraform. But if we about roles for tenants, it's dynamically and it's impossible to use, for example, Terraform. We need to write what is Keycloak configuration.
And what's wrong with Keycloak configuration? I don't understand. So anyway, we are targeting that we will configure Keycloak, first of all, automatically. Second, dynamically. So every new tenant should create a new bunch of roles, yeah, and in some safe way and convenient way.
Keycloak configuration is with several steps. First step, for example, it's create first realm, create first clients, create first roles, maybe several steps, and it's creating several groups. Further steps maybe it's realm roles for tenant admins, etc. We need to give we need to write what's mean Keycloak configuration, what task we resolve from them. It's difficult tasks and were resolved by difficult instruments.
Yeah,
To
I
my
think
mind.
at the phase one, we already had this definition of what should be done to make it working. And after the first phase will be done, we will think about how to automate it. Personally, I also thinking about creating separate API for configuration of Keycloak, because as far I know, Keycloak have RESTful API, and it should be easy to use the same approach to introduce the same resources and just convert YAMLs into JSON, which is stored in Keycloak. But let's consider and choose the proper way later. Let's agree that we need the documentation first, and then we can think if we can somehow automate it. So we will cover this functionality for now by the documentation itself. I would still like to agree on which solution do we use for the beginning. I think kube login should be enough to start. And if it will not be working very well, or if we will find better approach, we will quickly switch to something else. The other question is, do we need to enable Keycloak by default for every Cozystack installation?
I think that yes. And the logic is very straightforward, that every installation of Cozystack would have what we can call like a local user.
But it adds complex for installation, and maybe we need to enable by default without Keycloak and on OIDC.
I just thinking at this point, it seems that users should have a lot of should do a lot of manual tasks, and until they not automated, we can make it as optional component. We can move it out of the optional when it will be more dependent on other things like, I know, tenant configuration. So I think at current release, we can make it optional and consider making it like not optional component in the next releases.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. Sorry, guys, I need to drop. Sorry. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Thank you, Georg, for this discussion. And consider it non. To be honest, I think we discussed almost everything we wanted today. If you have any questions on how Cozystack working, any suggestions, any ideas, you can say them right now.
We have in Cozystack old problem with Cilium, and can we fix it or discuss in some maybe some issues?
Sure. What kind of problem with Serum do we have?
If we upgrade or no, if we upgrade, we always have problem with upgrade Helm charts, and Cilium always stuck it.
I think it is related to the specific problem we solved already. There were trouble on previous release on 017. There were actually problem with kube-config, but it was shown as Cilium is not working. Then we released the second one, which actually should fix this issue, but we forgot to update the manifests of Cozystack installation. So users were thinking that they using this 017.1, but they were actually continue using 017.0. If you're talking about those versions, I think this should be already fixed.
Okay, nice. I will try latest version in fresh installation and talk feedback for this.
Thank you, Marianne. Any other questions? In this way, going once, going twice. And thank you everyone for attending this meeting. See you next week, same time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.